down.
Talking about my generation.
Just because we get around.
On July 1st, 1971, the United States Congress ratified Amendment 26, which allowed 18-year-old citizens to vote. From 1972, the first election where voters 18 through 20 could vote, until present day, youth voters have become much less interested in voting. The number has gone down from 50% of the youth voting in the 1972 election to 32% in the 1996 election. The 2000 election proved to attract even more dismal numbers. But in the 2004 election, there was a different result. A record high number of youth voters at 51.6%.
Youth voters in recent times seem to be easily swayed toward one candidate or another by such materials as political humor. There was more political humor than ever in the 2004 election. The youth, more so than the other age groups, seemed to show their beliefs for their candidate by making fun of the opposing candidates, however, defending their own candidate at the same time. As the media produced more political humor, more youth Americans would consume the information and go out and register. Political cartoons are the most common form of political humor. Political cartoons portray the candidate in ways that exaggerate certain characteristics or facial features of a character. For instance, John Kerry's face in most political cartoons is elongated, while George Bush's ears are enlarged. Some well-known political cartoonists are John Deering, author of Strange Brew, Gary Trudeau, author of Doonesbury, and Bruce Tinsley, author of Millard Fillmore.
We interviewed local cartoonist John Deering from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette to hear his opinion on political cartoons.
I think that nowadays there's probably too much information, if nothing else. I think the voter probably gets overloaded by everything that they see on CNN and CBS and NBC and Fox and so on. But I think that if you want to affect the process, you have to at least try to put your opinion out there and hope that it makes a difference. But yeah, I do think that cartoons can influence voters to a certain extent. I do think that a lot of cartoonists show bias, and I'm not really sure if bias seems to be kind of a loaded word, but I think it's just a matter of your political persuasion and your political preference. What I try to do in my cartoons is hit both sides equally, and that is, I feel like that whoever is in office, I want them to do well because I want the country to do well. And if whether I supported a particular candidate in the election and he's elected, if I think that he's making mistakes, I'm gonna depict that in my cartoon. I try not to be a cheerleader for one side or the other, because I think that if you do that, I think that you're really limiting yourself and limiting your work, and I don't think that that's what a cartoonist should do. I think you should try to point out the foibles on both sides.
Do you think there's any political cartoonist or anybody who does political humor that is a cheerleader for one side?
Absolutely.
From 1971 until present day, the youth has always received a portion of political news and humor from sources like Late Night with Johnny Carson and SNL, to The Daily Show and Late Night with Jay Leno. After Carson first appeared on the TV, politically interested youth voters began to get their information from Johnny Carson's monologue. Now, in 2004, youth viewers of the same interests followed suit, watching shows like The Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
Lehrer then questioned the president on one of the controversial assertions that his campaign had been making.
Do you believe the election of Senator Kerry on November the 2nd would increase the chances of the U.S. being hit by another 9/11 type terrorist attack?
No, I don't believe it's going to happen.
Oh my God, we're not going to have an election. I can't believe he just came out and said that.
95% of the containers that come into the ports right here in Florida are not inspected. Civilians get onto aircraft and their luggage is x-rayed, but the cargo hold is not x-rayed. Does that make you feel safer in America?
Not anymore. Thanks a lot, Scaredy McFear-a-lot.
Saturday Night Live recently ran a stream of parodies making fun of the presidential debates in the 2004 election. Late-night comedians flooded their monologues with jokes poking at Kerry's flip-flopping and Bush's pronunciation problem. With its influential, witty, and usually biased fake news, Jon Stewart and his cast proved to be very influential figures on TV. Jon Stewart and his writers also wrote a book titled America, the Book.
The amount of political humor in television media was astounding in the 2004 election. However, the internet presented hundreds, if not thousands, more of examples of political humor. On the internet, almost everything was opinionated, and there was no restraint on explicitness. Cheap shots were made often. Sites such as E-Bomb's World and Albino Black Sheep often featured cartoons that poked fun at the candidates, sometimes using facts, but sometimes using only imagination. Media presented on the internet included edited video clips, flash movies, and awkward or edited pictures. Definitely the most popular cartoon during the election was a parody of Woody Guthrie's This Land. The cartoon was created by a website called Jib Jab. The cartoon included good-natured humor and presented to the youth the weaknesses of the candidates as well as supposed scandals relating to them.
This land belongs.
This land belongs. This land belongs to you and me. Yeah. Oh, and Dick Cheney, too.
Political humor from the hundreds of major sources had an enormous effect on the youth. It encouraged the youth to vote, and it usually swayed the youth toward one side or another. In the end, George Bush had the largest margin of votes by less than 2%, but the youth did not follow the same pattern. Kerry won the 18 through 29-year-old voters over with 54% of the vote, compared to Bush's 45%. Something obviously swayed the youth voters against the majority of the vote, and comparing facts from previous elections to the facts of this most recent election, the greatest increasing element was political humor.
Many sources of political humor didn't break into the mainstream until after 2000. Jon Stewart joined The Daily Show in 1998, but didn't catch much attention until 2000. Political humor on the internet was not very popular until after the 2000 election. There were examples of political humor, but the quantity and popularity of the media compared nowhere near to the 2004 election. Political humor has proved to be influential, effective, but most of all, it made the 2004 election a lot more interesting for youth voters.
I'm Dan Rather, and I approve this message. Kind of. Sort of. Not really.
Talking about my generation.